curated selection of photo essays, digital exhibitions, and talks by drawing on micro-histories of people and communities in Kerala. The archive also takes contributions, and we are happy and proud to announce that in the past 2 months, we have been gifted a wonderful collection of photographs of Kerala in the early 1980s by Canadian origin scholar and researcher Robin Jeffrey. And these will form the starting points of our inquiry together this season of Janal Talks. We look forward to this journey with you all. In fact, today's talk is also inspired from this series. Robin Jeffries, when he traveled in Kerala in the 1980s, his eye was drawn to architectural detail. And he used his camera to very randomly capture things that he just was pulled to. And so we started looking at, how we can make this exploration into Kerala photographs from the 80s richer through our interactions and through interdisciplinary kind of inquiry. The Janal Talk series is part of the programming around Janal Digital Archives, and the GeoJit Foundation supports Janal Archives and builds on the museum's founder, Madhavan Nair's dream of making history accessible to all. Before the lecture, I want to remind you all of a few house rules. Attendees, please keep your mics, your phones, etc. on mute for the duration of the lecture so that the speaker is audible. The lecture will be for 45 minutes, followed by a Q&A, where we'll take a maximum of 5 questions, and you can drop your questions in the chat. Remember, please, that everyone has their own beliefs and perspectives. Let's make an effort to respect others while sharing our own views. Now, a little bit about our speaker today. Architect Jacob Cherian is founding architect of Place Designs Kochi. He holds a B.Arch from NIT Trichy and a master's in urban design from SPA New Delhi. His design career of 30 years boasts a wide variety of projects, and some of his notable works include Ayur Soma at Chowara, the Center for Art Reference at Durbar Hall, St. GITS College of Engineering in Kottayam, and a senior citizens facility for Travancore Foundation in Kolenchery. A passionate educator, he has taught at CET and is a charter member of the Institute of Urban Designers, India. He began sketching at the age of 12, capturing people, trees, and places, and eventually moving on to buildings and streets. Over a span of 15 years through school and graduation, his sketchbook became the most valuable tool in his lifelong journey in observation, analysis, and design. In this talk, Jacob shares how drawing is a way of seeing, how travel and sketching shaped his architectural thinking, and how after a 3-decade pause, he has returned to live sketching, reconnecting with the practice that formed the foundation of his design language. Welcome you to the podium, sir.
Guruve Namaha. I start by remembering my teachers, a practice I picked up from M.V. Devan, who was a Renaissance man of Kerala, being adept at art, architecture, literature, public speaking, and institution building. One of the finest institutions that he built, Kerala Kalabidam, was instrumental in me standing here today because I learned so much at a young age when I was a student there. It's there that I came across this legendary figure, K.C.S. Panikkar, the great Indian artist who was an educator, and in his body of work, one can see the transformation from capturing real life to abstract. And that is, and he was a institution builder too. He established Cholamandalam Artist Village in Tamil Nadu, Madras, for artists to stay, work, and actually pursue their passion. He was also a long-time principal of Madras School of Art. Yulango taught me architecture at REC Trichy. He was everything a teacher should be, front philosopher and guide. and he taught us the importance of learning straight from architecture. That is not confined to books or classrooms. He made us visit old and new buildings and document, sketch, and learn. And Charles Correa, for me, was the most complete architect. He has built all over India, and very complex designs have been dealt with in such a simple manner by this great man. And he has given us a great document on the Indian urban fabric called the New Landscape. Laurie Baker has built in Kerala only, but build he did. And he's the one architect, I think, who looked at traditional Kerala architecture, shorn of all its imagery. He got to the core of how it works climatologically, and then reinvented the architecture using a different material, that is brick. And he trained craftsmen and took architecture out of the drawing board onto the site. Whereas across the strait in Sri Lanka, Jeffrey Bawa also looked at traditional architecture, but he romanticized it. He brought in light into the houses through the buildings through courtyards. He opened up side walls and brought in the surrounding landscape, created enclosure walls, and elevated our verdant paddy fields as high landscape architecture. Ramesh Tharagan was an ardent fan of Jeffrey Bawa, having been the first architect from Kerala who was trained in the modernist idiom and who set up practice here. And I had my formative years under his mentorship, and I learned immensely from him. K.T. Ravindran taught me urban design. He made me aware of the floor of the city and taught me the importance of doing every small project in the city is as important as the largest or grandest of building projects. And finally, Kaladharan, my mentor. My father did the best thing for me when he took me as a 12-year-old and introduced me to Kerala Kalapeetham. And there I was mentored by this great man, Kaladharan. And I had to keep a sketchbook continuously, and I fine-tuned my skills. And there would be times when he would ask me questions that actually would change my perspective. I still remember we had portrait and still life sessions, and I think I had mastered these things. And I was waiting for a pat in the back when he came, looked at my work, and asked me a simple question. So what is it in it that a photographer cannot do? It blew my mind. And at that moment, I realized that the role of an artist is not to slavishly document reality, but to look beyond, add a bit of your own character in it, and some inner meanings. And this took me on a journey. Suddenly, the abstract art I saw around me started making sense. And I would always connect, there were always exhibitions in Kalapeetham. I would connect the exhibits to the title. And this came in quite handy because I used to represent my institution at state and national level competitions. And there you'll be given a topic that you have to, in a finite amount of time, make a drawing of. And this would come in handy many years hence when actually my daughter challenged me to do the Inktober. Now, Inktober is a challenge in the month of October. It's in the social media where you are given a series of topics, one for each day, and you have to make a sketch and post it on that day. So it was a nice way of getting back. I had taken a long break from sketching, and then this helped me get back on track. I would also participate in idea competitions during the 90s. The first is actually a competition. It was actually a call for entries on ideas regarding what to do with the Ayodhya site post the demolition. And I came up with a fairly worked out cultural institution, and this was one of the entries that were published in India Today during that period. The other thing is a wind pavilion I designed for a Japanese Design Foundation competition. Wind pavilion was my take after the Hawa Mahal in Jaipur or the Panch Mahal in Fatehpur Sikri or the tower in Tanjavur. So I used this as an opportunity to explore some ideas, but placing it in Kerala. So here I take a small pause to remember a dear friend, my classmate, architect D. Vishwanath, who passed away yesterday, pausing on in his memory. This talk actually is structured around my sketches okay, built over a period of time. And I wouldn't say that actually I was very academic, very systematically I've studied this. I've traveled, I've sketched, I was armed with my sketchbook and my pen and an inquisitive mind. And all this that I've noticed are my first-hand observations from the sites I visited. And what I learned from that actually has immensely informed my career. And this is the 25th year of my practice. I founded my firm Place Designs 25 years ago. So I'll just briefly take you through my works during the period before I start with my main talk. One of my earliest works, it's actually a renovation and extension for a 500-year-old church. What you see in the center, that is the old church, and these are things I added. So they wanted a larger church. So instead of breaking the walls and creating a new church, I suggested that we will do two parallel churches, because in our Jacobite tradition we can have 3 altars. And I had sketched this actually when I was a student. That's my sketch made in the late 80s. And so it came in quite happily. And then what I did, the simple thing I did was I documented every single thing that existed there and recreated that along the outer edge of the new building, so that it does not look as if an architect has been at work here, just that we added some facilities. So just wanted to make my contribution very, very invisible. Closest to any architect will be his own house, and for me it was a home office. So my wife Sandhya and myself, we built it when we were in our 30s. Our 3 kids grew up there. My parents spent their last days there. So a lot of memories in this house. And for me, I also carried a lot of memories from my architectural journeys. And one of the things which I wanted to use was this element. That is actually that steeply sloping roof with a sloping screen and air passing through it as my studio. I kept it over my driveway carporch and built my house around it. This is one of my longest running projects. Out of the 25 years, for 23 years, I've been working on this campus. It's an engineering college campus in Kottayam, where I think all the urban design I ever learned, actually, I've practiced here. I use buildings, the white are the buildings. I use buildings to frame the unbuilt. So that's a strategy we can follow so that we get interesting, impressive spaces. Like the amphitheater in the back. So the buildings actually will take the shape of the amphitheater. That is a big circle. That's a half an acre roundabout we created at the entrance. The road passes through it so that actually the road, it will not feel as if the institution is actually encroaching onto public domain. This actually is after all my studies on traditional Kerala architecture, the one work where I could use a lot of that detail was a resort called Ayur Soma in Kovalam for the Somathiram group. The client was also a great collector of art artifacts, and he collects old buildings too. And it was a great experience. We spent close to 8 years building this. And this is the city church we designed here in Kochi. So it has got 2 levels of parking. And I had this from my studies. I had this notion that a church has to be on a hillock. So I used the grand flight of steps in front to hide the parking behind, and created a public space by pulling back the entrance, the gate, so that actually the road does not get encroached on when people come out and all that. This is actually a small architecture in context project done behind the Durbar Hall Art Gallery. So this is actually a tiny center for art reference building. It's a library and a bookshop. So what we did is we followed the architecture of the Durbar Hall. That's a 2-storied volume, but there's enough height there. So in the building that we created, that's a 3-storied building. And the bookshop, much smaller in scale, we gave it a big entrance way so that actually it does not feel diminished by the presence of the other buildings around. This is an attempt at creating a landmark, because the church in Pathanamthitta, it's on a hillock with roads all around. So we had to build it such that it is visible, and aspects of it is visible from all around, from great distances. This is a house I designed on the Alva River for film director Sibi Malayil. It's a single-storied house with an attic where a lot of his workspace is there. The reason why I included this is because There's a story, because we all have stories, right? So my story is that in 1989-90, when I was studying Padmanabhapuram Palace, a movie shooting was going on. I was a very shy kid and I wouldn't even go that side. But there was His Highness Abdullah being shot by C.B. Malail there. Many years hence, 20 years hence, he would come to me for his house, and I told about the story of how our paths had inadvertently crossed 20 years ago. And recently, when he celebrated his 40 years in the movie, I made a print of the sketches I made then and gifted it to him. And this is the project very close to my heart, designed for a friend who is no more, Manoj Muatubira. So he's an art lover, a close friend of Kaladharan, and he wanted a small house where the Muatubira River is turning when it comes to this plot. So he was this great art aficionado. He has the biggest collector of Nambudiri's paintings, and he was very bothered about his solitude. So he was saying that people across the river, on the river, and the bridge that is being constructed will create a privacy problem for him. Whereas I said that if you don't push it close to the river, you will not be able to see the river well. So what we did is there was a great tree that was jutting out into the river. So we hinged the entire house behind it, so that the canopy of the tree will give us all the privacy we want. So the rooms now, we can get a great view of the river. That's the pool that's over there, which has got that, and that's the tree. So it actually shades the entire thing. And then we created a big roundabout which you can walk around, amphitheater steps, and sculpture. So this is what he did. So when we discussed about some art, he just blew my mind. He asked Kaladharan Mash to organize the biggest private sculptors camp in his property, brought in big boulders of granite, and 7 sculptors worked for these are all leading sculptors in India. They created artifacts, bespoke sculptures to be kept in the landscape. That is me and Kaladharan Mash with the late Manoj at Nambudiri's funeral. Manoj passed away 1 month after Nambudiri's death. And from this inspiration I got from Kalabhidam about sketching, etc. And from this great instruction I got from my teacher, Elongo, that it's important that you sketch live. Me and my friends, we used to travel a lot, and Tanjavur was very close to Trichy. So we would go to Tanjavur. It's a great city with a lot of architecture. And I had to make the transition of sketching people to sketching buildings. So initially, what I did is I would sketch from some archival photographs. So that's a photograph so that's easier, to sit in your room and do it. And then I ventured into sketches of the city, the settlement. So that is the settlement plan, and then the streets. So it was more, I was just getting there. And then I could do the live sketch. Okay, so this is a sketch close to my heart. I think it's one of my best sketches. It is in a lane called Mutojiyappa Sand in Tanjavur. I remember the sun, the heat, everything when I sketched this. And while doing, I learned how they lay the pan tiles, how the rafters and how the wooden columns are, how the masonry columns with the capital work, how the walls curve like that, how the balusters are there in the parapet above, and how some of them are missing. All this is getting documented real time. And I'm saying this is because you're actually scanning. Even the electricity post, how the wire goes into the house, all these things are actually subject, because these are all things you document, and something is getting etched in your memory. More streets, studying additions that are made, the interesting features that are there, a shrine in the corner, balcony. So everything becomes a learning. And then there is a tower, there is an artifact, the wall. And then we documented the wall to see how it works. Then you will see all the additions made to the old buildings and how it's already making that area look a lot lesser than it used to be. And then, of course, the palace itself. So now here, I started getting an idea of scale, because the person's there, so you understand the scale of that space, and with great detailing on the ceiling. And it's in ruins too, so actually one could also feel what a great structure it would have been. So you're getting a hang of great buildings in ruins. And then there was the tower itself. So this is a big moment for me, because in a tower, it's pyramidal in shape. So what happens is that it recedes in plan. So what is constant is the center, and you would expect the staircase to be in the center, but the staircase was not in the center. So I, over multiple visits, because you can only spend so much time up the tower, I documented this and finally figured out that they have actually hidden the staircase in the perimeter masonry walls. So the staircase get hidden in this, and it's again, it keeps receding. That's the lower floor, upper floor, it goes back like that. And that was a big moment. I realized how the cleverness of the builders in doing that, and it's an 10-story building. And also there was that's a square-shaped room where the roof becomes a dome, and the intricate detail that they made in building it to reach that level. No? Eventually in Tanjavur, we'll go and spend the evenings in the forecourt of the Brihadishwara temple, and again sketch, see the enclosure walls around. Some of them have fallen down, but you can make out the scale. Then study the architecture. This, I was sure, is a later addition. But then I noticed that even then, what they did is, they made sure that the detail in the plinth, the stone in the plinth gets carried through, so they created that opening and that opening, so that that plinth does not get disrupted. And then again, that's a spout where the water from the sanctum sanctorum comes out onto a tank. How in the corners they use figurines. How the perimeter corridors actually have sculptures of Nandi. The overall enclosure, the tower is a quick study because I had to finish it fast. Then the details on the tower base, and then at the entrance court, I managed to get a quick sketch of an elephant and realized how so well the scale fits. We also traveled to a place like Tiruvayar, where the music festival happens, and see how the city meets the settlement meets the river with the ghats. That's a music festival venue. Parallel to this, actually, we had our theory classes going on, and I would try to make sense of what I was learning. So one was this an analysis made. So we have the pure forms like the pyramid, the dome, that's the stupa. So that's a pure form, that's solid mass. Then you have the alluded space, because you have the minarets like in the Hagia Sophia or in the Taj, it alludes space. And there is the interplay in a building like the Parthenon, where you have the pillars and voids under the big roof. Likewise, I started documenting and sketching gateways. No? So there is gateways in Kerala for temples and in Tamil Nadu, and how a typology gets dealt with differently. This is a small detail that I caught my eye. It's a Chettinad door, and that's the door. And this detail that I actually blew up on and realized that, it's just from a square, it becomes a fluted panel, and how it does it. And there's so much of detail there. And that was a big moment when I realized that people look at such intricate things when they make these crafted works. Also, we were learning the masters. And see, NIT Trichy was a peripheral institution. We never got any practicing architects to come and teach. We had teaching architects. So we had to spend a lot of time in the library learning, and I would, in my way, sketch the architect and his architecture and write it also down. And these are notes I kept. So that's Le Corbusier and that's Richard Mayer. Even for the dry subjects like climatology, to make it interesting for me, I would sketch the architecture that actually came out of all those climatology responses. And this is an actual documentation. We have at the National Association of Students of Architecture meets, we have to document for a competition called Louis Kahn. And so we documented a temple. So this was actually a chariot temple, the Amritakadeshwarar temple at Mele Kadambur in a small town of Tamil Nadu. So I documented the building elevation and that sketch. Okay, I had a lot of time, so the more time you spend, the more details you can draw. So that is the prancing horse, that is the wheels of the chariot, And that again is the spout that brings down the water from the sanctum sanctorum. Every stone is detailed. So it's an exercise to understand buildings more clearly. Of course, it is not just old buildings we studied. We traveled to Auroville and studied the buildings. But then realized that actually there's a problem with the sketch because I didn't put a person in there. So I don't know the scale now. So something went missing. So to know the scale of this, I should have put a person here. But anyway, this is a study in Jaisalmer of a mud house inside the fort. So this is a series of sketches that lead you so you are going towards that, okay? Closer and that. So that is actually a lady sitting and cooking. The kitchen is only that tall. She can not stand inside that. And this is from the other side. So this is the size of the kitchen, and that is the kind of architecture that was there. So I never could imagine people living in such small spaces. And that was an eye-opener and very colorful too. And this is actually the other set of housing in Jaisalmer. The richer class, they stay in the Havelis. And being a desert climate, what they do is the buildings are placed very close. And you have these narrow streets. So because they are placed close, automatically they shade each other. And it has to be dense, so it's multi-storied. And in a couple of places, there will be no building there, so you can sit there and watch the building in its entirety. So that was again a learning. And those are the mud houses in the villages. So it's a Kanoi village outside Jaisalmer where suddenly you found that there is an enclosure wall. This is open to sky. Then buildings for various rooms structured around it. And then the color. So it was another way of living in the open. And that was an interesting way one could learn architecture. That is actually, again, sketches from Fatehpur Sikri, from Udaipur, from Jodhpur, and Agra. This is from Delhi. So this actually sketch is important for me because first time I was attempting to do something on a large scale. I had to capture the Red Fort in its entirety. I didn't want to go into the details because I didn't have the time. So in the quickest possible manner, how I can just take the essential things out. So these are things that you pick up as you become more adept at sketching. But I had more time at Humayun's Tomb and at the Jummah Masjid, so more details there. Later, I would go and do my master's in Delhi, and this is actually what is called urban landscape study of the Kashmiri Gate area. So one thing is that actually, while I love sketching with pen, the fastest you can sketch is with pencil. Because in the back of your mind, I think you know that actually you can always erase a wrong line. But I never use an eraser now, but you can sketch really fast. But then you may need to revisit it because the lines are very faint. And of course, that is the architecture on an epic scale. That is Chandigarh, designed by the French architect Le Corbusier. He built on a clean slate, a new city. And that is the main Capitol complex where the main Legislative Assembly building and the public spaces. So there, since it's short of any history, he had to create edifices. So all the important buildings like the High Court, the Governor's House, all this became important public buildings. And also he created this monument called because he didn't have any religious institutions, so he created what is called the Open Hand Monument with the sunken court. And basically, suddenly we were up face to face with architecture on an epic heroic scale, all done in natural concrete. This is actually the museum there. The interesting thing is this is a wall, this is a door. It's like a wall, it's pivoted, and once it's closed, it closes off the museum. That's a handrail detail. That's a building, but that's a spout. I mean, rainwater comes collecting around that and will cascade down into this pond. Okay, these are details you can only learn if you go and sketch. You cannot learn it from a book. We traveled on to Ahmedabad. Again, this is a building by Le Corbusier. This is actually Millowners Association building. Those are the lines left by the removal of shuttering for an exposed concrete building. Those are nice toilet blocks in a double height area. So a lot of learning from visiting these buildings. That is from the Sun Temple at Modera, and that is from Mount Abu. I got to do my internship in the office of B.V. Doshi called Sangat in Ahmedabad. 6 months I spent in one of the greatest buildings built. Sangat is one of his finest work, and that is Doshi. I caught him when I was sitting in the loft. So we trainees sit on a loft in a vaulted volume looking down, and the building steps up to the upper floor. Okay, and that is actually, I used to make these cartoons. So that is me sitting there while those are two of the British architects who came for a stint to Doshi's office. And I remember them well because I remember their sketchbooks. Because they had this, they just came from Leh Ladakh, and they had this finest of sketches made of the timber structures they had visited. And it gave me a lot of confidence to continue sketching. Then I discovered Jeffrey Bawa. This was the only building he built outside Sri Lanka that's in Madurai, called the Madurai Courts Club. And suddenly I felt that architecture can be timeless. So he used granite pillars, old pillars, artifacts, um, stone walls, and a typology, and then created something that felt so much at home, so new, but again so old. And that was a big eye-opener. Then I tried to understand how it worked, made sketches of all these details. Parallelly, at the same time, I was reading upon a Turkish architect called Sedat Eldam. So this is actually an interesting thing for me because these are all studies I made from his book. These are all the traditional architecture of Turkey, and these are the buildings he made. And see, there is the spirit of this actually is there here, but it's not a modern building. Then I got to understand that there's this movement. It's not a movement. It's something that Brian Bryce Tyler, an architecture historian, put together. He called it the regionalist approach to design. That is actually Jeffrey Bawa's studio in Sri Lanka. That is Charles Correa's Kanchenjunga Apartments. Now, this is for the longest time, this perplexed me because the explanation sketch given next to this is actually called Bungalow in the Sky. And the sketch is of a bungalow with verandas all around. Because I was used to abstract art, I could somehow make connections. What he meant was that these are double height veranda balconies, and that do the same trick as a veranda that wraps around. So anyway, enthused by all this, I decided to do my thesis on a regionalist approach to design. That's a cover I made on the courtyard theme. So the task I set myself was that I'll study the vernacular architecture of Kerala, get familiarized with it, and then create guidelines which will help me design a new campus for Kerala Kalabadam itself as a giving back. So I would travel and document various typologies. This was actually the Hill Palace, where actually this is the colonial layer. You have the bungalow typology here, and then further down you have the old Ettigata below. Studied the temple, that's the Tripunithura temple. So these are all my study sheets. So I made proper presentation sheets for all this, but then this is what I made in my sketchbook. So that I felt is more, it will communicate more to somebody, a student, than my finished drawings. It again discusses about enclosures, forms. This is the Dutch Palace. The first time I'm actually detailing the sloping wooden screen. That becomes a favorite for me. It's a bracket, and that's how it actually is there around the courtyard. The window seats with the thick masonry walls, you create this. Then there's a grand ceiling detail that came, and wooden screens. This is actually from an old church, Kadamatam church, and this grand flight of steps is what actually I try to recreate in the Sunoro church. Again, details on the perimeter buildings which actually echo our traditional Kerala architecture. So this is the Pumukam. And I learned in that 6 months, I learned everything about traditional Kerala architecture, timber joinery, because I sketched them out. So sketching them, it just gets implanted in your memory, every single detail. That's the other aspects of the church. This is the Tadamel church in Tripunithura. This is actually the mana. This is a medanga mana. It's an ettugattu. The door detail, how they draw the water up, the roof, how it works, the bathhouse minus the roof, the entranceway, the screen, the door detail. That's the overall site plan. That's another mana that's in Mangalatha mana in Muatupura, with its again the courtyard detail. And that's the Pumuli mana. I couldn't access all of it because we're talking about late 80s, so they were still living there. So I got access to the one of the grandest ponds, bathhouses, 2-storied high with granite pillars, and then you have steps coming down from all sides and a great courtyard in the center. So for me, after studying the architecture, I realized that the one single building which epitomizes the traditional architecture of Kerala the best is the Krishnapuram Palace in Kayangulam. So that has the finest detailing. That is the Padmanabha Swami temple and precincts. That's the temple tank, the play of roofs leading up, and then the palace buildings in the East Fort. This is actually a row house typology from Kundangulam, which I studied, and it gave me valuable insights to design similar projects later on in my career. And finally, Padmanabhapuram Palace. So here, from above, it looks very simple. But on the ground, there are a series of enclosure walls, gateways, raised plinths, verandas, and distant views of buildings in the same complex. And the detail allowed the most is the sloping wooden screens. So this is actually at a lower level, that's at a higher level. But that detail was something that actually I loved. And then within the screen, you will have windows to open and look out, and doorways too. And also, where they wanted more privacy, the roof comes down further, and then you get only very limited amount of light. You get built-in seating there, and then various levels. This is actually a favorite sketch of mine because it actually is from you can only see this by rotating your head. You cannot capture it even in a camera. But for me, it carried the essence of the place. This play of roofs, these tiny courtyards, verandas, roofs, screens, cantilevered wooden structures. And that is actually 2 sketches of the main tower. And this is the iconic image of Padmanabhapuram Palace that we all remember. The play of roofs, that tower in the back, and this tower, which for me was the finest embodiment of traditional Kerala architecture. That is 3 stories of blank wall with minimal openings, and then there is this suddenly cantilevering out 2 layers of fabulous timberwork and roof above. That is what you see there. So having done the study, I realized that when I sat down to design, because I have to conclude this was a design, and I found that you cannot bring all this learning into a design that fast. No, you cannot do it all in 6 months. I did it, but I know that actually it needs a much more longer period of time, and I dedicated the rest of my professional life, as and when I could, to further this dialogue with regionalism. Of course, I didn't stop my documentation there. I would further, again travel. That's actually from Kolangod, the Kolangod Kovilakam. There's an anecdote here because many years later, I was working with Ramesh Taragan, and this client came to us, the late Ranjit Kurula. He had purchased the Pumugam of this palace, and it was already broken down. And he wanted Ramesh to integrate that into his mansion in Trichur. And since I knew I've documented this, I got to work on that project, and that was a memorable project. And of course, Fort Kochi in Mattancherry. This actually, I sketched this in '93 from across the water body from Waipin. And it's pretty much the same still. And that I think is thanks to K.T. Ravindran and his intact report. In between, I also did the documentation for the World Monuments Fund. These are drawings I made. This is what's called a cutout axonometric of the clock tower. And this actually was how they started with renovating the clock tower. So that is the clock tower with minus the walls in the corner to understand how the structure worked. And that is the precinct. That's a clock tower, and that's the. So I figured this out without the help of a drone camera. It was not available those days. So a bit of imagining had to be done to make it. Now it's quite simple to do it. Finally, Fort Cochin. So Fort Cochin, for me, is special because of two things. One is it because of the interesting architecture it has, and two is because it managed to stay like that. And this is thanks to the intact report made by Professor K.T. Ravindran in the late 80s, which led to this being declared as a heritage area. And I studied under him. And then there was this aspect of Fort Cochin that he mentioned. See, it is not just a roof. People think that in Fort Cochin, if you just put a slope roof above, it becomes in context. No, it's about how the building sits with the street, how the staircases go up, how the windows are, and most importantly, the percentage of built walls to openings. So he said that you cannot have a building with full glass windows with a slope roof above and say that that is actually contextually correct. He said that you have to maintain the percentage of openings to walls. So that's a key learning, and it's something that I was really inspired by. So after my master's came a big pause, mid-90s to mid-2025, 30 years, I somehow lost my way as far as architecture sketching is concerned. See, it is because I was setting up my practice, started a family, whatever. But I was forewarned. See, Charles Correa had come for our convocation in 1996, and he had given a talk about how, as young architects who are moving forth into your careers, you should make sure that you continuously nourish yourself intellectually by visiting buildings of great character, old and new, following other architects' works, reading and traveling. And I had this great way of learning firsthand by sketching. And I stopped doing it. And I regret that. So I restarted this year. And this is a series of sketches I did back to Fort Cochin. And that's the reason why I'm standing here, because Aditi was there on that trip, intact trip, and she saw me sketch and said, why don't we do this? And that's why I'm here. So thank you, Aditi, for inviting me. I think the sketch is responsible for that too. So I sketched the Bastion Bungalow from, that is actually, the first sketch is from the beach. We used the Bastion and then the bungalow there, and that is actually from inside the bungalow. So for me, that the roof was interesting, the way it's getting cantilevered out because of the beating rains, and then what Katie mentioned about walls to openings. Ground floor, all blank walls, and then full of openings upstairs. So that's the typology. I would also go across to where I drew that sketch of the Chinese fishing nets in '93 and sketched the Our Lady of Hope Church. But actually, I started sketching a little last December towards the New Year's time when my cousin brother took me on a trip to Cambodia, and that was an awesome place, and I restarted sketching the details of buildings, the whole buildings, and that's of course is the Angkor Wat, and then the Buddha from there. From then on, I always make it a point to, whenever I travel, to sketch. Okay, and this is actually a sketch I made in Mahabalipuram. So there's an anecdote here because the first sketch is unfinished. That's the short temple. See, in the 80s, I'm sure if I went to sketch the short temple, if I was brave enough, I could have climbed on top of this short temple and nobody would have bothered. But there I was sitting quietly and sketching this. You know, I took a cab from Chennai to Mahabalipuram only to sketch, okay? Nothing else. The security guard came running with a whistle blowing and with a big stick and said, I'm doing something unlawful. Because according to ASI rules, you cannot do measure drawings of ASI protected monuments without a prior notice, permission. And I didn't have that, so I had to stop sketching wherever it was, and then I had to leave. So when I went out to the rock temple, that's the Arjuna's penance, I stood outside the gate and sketched so that they cannot stop me. So went to Bombay, and I got tired sketching this. This is the Taj at Bombay, and all those details. And this is what I said about the scale of the sheet, because the sheet was too small, so I could not put in all the details I wanted there. But one thing I did is I went back to the backside of the Taj, and then found that it's got a much more interesting side to it. It's a C-shaped building with the open area facing the inside. And that's when I realized that there's something to the story about how the architect who designed it was heartbroken because they built it wrong. Apparently, this side was supposed to have been facing the sea, but they built it wrong. But here again, I was accosted by the security guards because of all security reasons. They didn't want to know who's hanging around. They wouldn't mind me taking a picture, but when I sketched, they wanted to know everything about me. I also sketched the gateway from the Bombay Yacht Club top. And the gateway, interestingly, is under renovation. That's why all the scaffolding is there. I also detailed the cast iron of the window through which I saw it. And incidentally, I posted this in our master's group and realized that the conservation architect who was doing this, Abha Narayan, was my batchmate from SPA days. And from the same window, looking to the right, I could capture the corner minaret of the Taj Mumbai. So this is my last sketch. This is from the Elephanta Caves. Okay, I wrote the name wrong. That's not the Buddha statue. But that is actually a statue inside, and that is actually, I'm just sitting on the edge, outside, inside, and that's inside. So at this point, see, having had this 30-year break from sketching, I could exactly understand what was going on, because the other thing I did was from a very young age, I was continuously sketching, so I didn't realize what was happening. So let me put this in perspective. So one of the best compliments I got for my work is from the great architect Peter Rich from South Africa, who is part of the sketching group, and he said he likes the way I frame my sketches. Now, how do you frame your sketch? It's like this. First of all, you have to be really thrilled by the subject matter to sketch itself. You cannot sketch anything. I cannot sketch anything. So having seen that, I will walk around and then size it up and know where I can get the best possible angle. And then I'll settle down with a pen and a pad. And then my brain, through my eyes, will scan the subject matter. And real time, a sixth sense will be making me calculate the exact scale in which I will draw, the exact detail of the subject matter I will put depending on the size of the sheet. And all this is happening in a split second. And you have to steal yourself from all the onlookers, because they will be distracting you. So you have to do all this. You have to be in a zone to do a live sketch. Okay? And that is the beauty, and that is the engaging, and that's how you feel so alive when you sketch. And of course, now the question will come, in the 30 years between my last sketch and this, didn't I see good frames? I did. But what did I do? I took out my camera and captured that moment, and that's it. I never revisited that moment again, because it is not in my memory, it is in that device's memory. So it is not with me. Whereas when I sketch everything, I remember every sketch I ever made. I know where I was, who I was with, which trip I was in. So the great thing about live sketching is that you are challenged when you are face to face with a building or a landscape that is commensurate to your capacity for wonder. I stop here, but I'd like to say thanks to a few people. First, to my wife Sandhya, who, my manager, my muse. She is the one who put this all together and made it possible for me to present this today like here. To my 3 children, Chako, Sara, and Mani, who constantly encouraged me to restart sketching. To that fabulous sketching group that I got drafted into last year, which actually made me start sketching all over again. It's an architecture sketching group started by my junior from college called Dana. He's based in Tanjore. The architects from all over India and abroad, we post sketches. And I would like to acknowledge the contributions in that of veterans like Ravi Gadre and Sanjeev Joshi from Pune. And there's Balaji from Chennai. There is Sanjay Kanvinde, who constantly mentors us, and Peter Rich from South Africa, and a whole lot of others who that encouraged me to restart sketching. And a special thanks to my dear friend from undergrad days, Ravi Krishnan. We used to sketch together, all those Tanjavur and all that. And he's no more an architect, he's into design. But he restarted sketching and told me, hey, I've started, and maybe it's time you also started, so I thank them too. And last but not the least, to Aditi, to Kerala History Museum, and to GITS Foundation for making it possible for me to do this. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Before we get into a formal thanks, the floor is open for questions. We'll take 5 questions. I hope you've been thinking about your questions. If anyone is ready to go, please raise your hand.
It's really amazing. I'm quite happy more than anything to see this, that you're towards the beginning of your sketches. It was like a lot of information was sought and you were looking at the details as an architect. But when you restarted it, you're tending towards more art and free flow than information. So can you explain, please?
That's actually the, see, I always think that, that's why I said the 2 periods. I was seeking then, and I wanted to learn. I'm not saying that I don't want to learn now, but I am just restarting. So maybe in another a few months or maybe a couple of years, I may get back to that where I start making those kind of notes and learnings.
What can you do with the mics?
Is sketching a part of the architecture course that you've taken?
Actually, not really. Actually, there is some aspect of it which actually comes in the first year, way back, where you had freehand drawing, because you assume that people are just starting. So when I just mentioned Ravi Krishnan, I'm sure that he was equally talented or more talented than me. But I started 5 years back. No, so by the time I reached there, I had hit the ground running, whereas he had to catch up. So people of various skill sets come, and they have to bring everybody to the same level. So you have those exercises, but it's not. See, if Elango had not told me that you had to go and do this, I would not have done that. Though I had the skills, I may not have done that. That's why I remember him, because without that, it wouldn't have happened.
No, just a curious question. Do you do it in one sitting, or it's for an extended period of time? I mean,
No, actually, now earlier during previous stint, most of my sketches were in one stint. Okay, like I'll tell you, the Padmanabhapuram Palace sketches would have been, I would have added the pencil work later. The sketch has to be done real time. When I restarted, I wanted to do maximum sketches at the same time. So these were all, the lines were drawn, and then in a pen and ink rendering, and I came home and spent time rendering it. Real time you render, then you will have only time for 1 or 2 maximum in a day, and then you want to do more because you've got more interesting things to do.
Switch on the mic, please. Switch on the mic.
Your drawings have really inspired me to sketch more. So I don't really sketch well. So in order to improve your sketches, how long do you need to practice per day?
See, I'll tell you, I just, for this talk, I revisited my sketchbooks from 1980s. So the proportions, so initially I started drawing people. The proportions are all wrong. It took me a couple of years to get the proportions right. But I relentlessly sketched. And so what Kaladharan Mash told me was that you have to sketch with a pen on a book and just fearlessly sketch. And if you practice enough, you will get the proportions right. So the trick is that if you do that, then you try the trees. Your trees are more complex, and objects. And then, so if you have covered all this, by the time you reach the buildings, things become easier for you. So, but it's just practice. Okay, I think I would definitely say that the skill, the talent has to be there to some extent, but you can develop. Because then now the architect who started a sketching group, I remember how he sketches from earliest and how he's developed. So if you work at it, you can really do wonders. If you carry a sketchbook with you, I say that I used to be a nuisance as a kid. No, I used to have this book and I used to sketch everybody. And so much so that that's how I got into architecture. That's another story. My maternal uncle could see me keeping on scribbling and say that when you grow up, you become an architect because there's some connection between sketching and architecture. And that's how I became an architect.
Hi.
Hi.
With all AI and your glasses, artificial intelligence glasses and whatnot, how an architect like you or the future generation of architects would do the sketching? Have you ever tried using any of those new gadgetries in your sketches?
No, when I tried sketching on the iPad, that's about it. But what I felt was that actually this, so I don't force a design. I mean, if I just look at it that way, so how do you design? You get a brief, you discuss with the client, and you let it sink in. And you don't force it for at least a week or two. And slowly something will get figured out. I think when you're sleeping or something, I don't know, there's some complex way it works. So the thing is that you keep nourishing there. And I'm not saying that you just open a book and take a look at no, I don't follow Pinterest. I don't look at images and try to fit images together into architecture. So it has to come together for me. And I know that actually from experience, I know that the process of sketching is one way I can actually, because the process of drawing itself is actually is a therapy. And when we are designing also, I use butter sheets. Make a drawing and then I put an overlay, again make a tracing, and then, so there is this concept called slowness. So slowness is about actually how you develop the design. So in the good old days, the only way, if you make a drawing and then you want to make a change, you will put a butter sheet over it. That's a tracing sheet. And you will sketch the parts that are not changed, and then you add the new thing. Whereas in computers now you can just edit there, and then you can the same thing will appear and you can just edit out things. But in slowness, what I say is that the process of retracing itself is actually aiding design to develop in a new direction which you wouldn't have thought of. So I am all for that. I'm old-fashioned, but I'm all for that.
How many more questions should we take? We are already.
Yeah, so very happy to see the sketches. In the Western world, you see a lot of people sitting by the roadside and sketching all the time. But though we have so many architecture and engineering and design schools, we don't see that many people, or just people interested in art, I mean, fine arts, whatever, doing that in public spaces. Is there a reason why that is so? I mean, I know in colleges they're taken out for or asked to do an exercise, then people go, but like just for the sake of, like you're doing now, for the sake of sketching, is there a reason why people don't do that?
No, actually, in every town now, every city, there's a group called the Urban Sketchers Group, and they are sketching. I'm not part of that because I couldn't. It's always a Sunday morning, and somehow I'm not able to make that slot. But then also, I'm a little choosy. I can only sketch what I want. So if I don't like something, I don't sketch it. So it has to be something that challenges me. So, but the larger thing is that inspired teachers always ensure that students go and do all this. And at a larger level, public spaces where all this happens, that's also, I don't know, I not thought about it. It's actually an interesting question. Wherever I gone and sketched, I realized that I used to be quite alone doing all this. Even in the new setup when I went and did all this. Also, I was probably the only guy. I think the only other time I saw another person sketching was in Cambodia. Otherwise, in all these places, I was the only one sketching. I think it will change because I think a lot of students, I think, there's an anecdote from my Kalabidam days. I joined Kalabidam in 1980 as a 12-year-old. I was the youngest in the class, and the senior most was 70 years old. He had come back to restart his passion. And people from all walks of life were there. They had a passion, and they wanted to restart. So I'm sure that maybe the challenge is for institutions like Kerala Museum to go at a larger scale and actually make people aware of this. So that, see, it's not just architects, no. Everybody can sketch. Everybody should sketch also. And that actually makes it a very pleasurable experience. But often now you take a picture, no, and I think that's the biggest problem. When I used to have a camera, good old days, I used to be the only kid with a camera because we had 36 films. So you are very sure of how many you will take. Whereas now with the cell phones and all this, you can just take n number of pictures and then it just loses value. Because even if I take with my cell phone now, it will take only one picture. I am very stingy that way.
Anyone else? Okay, last one. And then, two more. Okay.
Okay, lovely, beautiful sketches. First, let me say that. But I think that when you do sketching, you have to have an eye for the play of light and the effects of light and shade and which are the areas which allows the sketcher to give that depth to to that dimension to the sketch. Did you right from the beginning have that insight, or did you slowly gradually develop it?
Actually, I became more conscious of the light aspect actually in the last sketch, really, because while I was sketching that, I was thinking, how the hell did they make those sculptures? It was difficult for me to actually sketch it in that light. Those rock-cut temples, how did they make those sculptures in that dim light? I mean, I did think about that. And of course, the play of light is, so you think about, but you, see, curiosity is what ultimately drives you, right? So it is not just, and I definitely remember the quality of light in the courtyards and the surrounding spaces inside the manas that I studied, because the light just filters in. So, but I wouldn't say I was too aware of it until I started seeing Jeffrey Bawa's works. Then I understood how can use light, because he brought in courtyards and that as a device to bring in light and for circulation. So, yes.
Hi, JC. See, this is more of a comment. Actually, I am his classmate from the college he studied, right from school itself. I just want to say I'm so happy for you that you restarted your passion, because all through these years, I know when you started profession, you cut on this sketching thing had gone out of your system. For the audience, I would like to tell them that JC in our college is a living legend. There were only two people here, JC and Erin. So even the younger students, the decent students, when we go for these alumni meets, they keep raving about JC sketches, all these NASA sketches and all. So it's not something normal you are seeing there. It is something very valuable. And again, to reiterate, I'm happy you started sketching. And all the best to you and all the luck.
Thank you, Srikumar.
Okay, with that, we come to the close of our session. I'm just going to do a formal thank you, and then we cut our live feed. And if anybody wants to interact with Jacob Cherian anymore, you may do so informally. So when I'd heard about his legendary sketching from his teachers, of course, but when I saw him sketching in Fort Cochin that day on the walk, a lot of memories for me also came back because as a child, my father, who was also an architect, used to make us do a bit of sketching, and he always started with the trees. And that was always the first big obstacle we faced, how to sketch a tree. So this kind of resonated with me straight away. But also, a huge thank you to you because, like you said, this idea of slowly sitting down to digest something, process it, analyze it, and not kind of quickly capture it. Studies show today that, when museum audiences are sent around the museum with cameras and one group without cameras, the learning process is completely different, and the people without the cameras retain much more than the people who have devices in their hands. So there's a lot to be said for this kind of slow learning. There's a lot to be said for even, what we are kind of experimenting with here at the museum is so much of intergenerational workshops and things like that. And we find that both the youngsters and one of our workshop participants has actually renamed anyone who's above the age of 50 as a scene-ager. So teenagers must also benefit as much from their interaction with, children as possible. So this is something that we try to do. But to see the longitudinal effect of someone who spent their whole life doing this and the fruition of that and the fact that he's able to bring that back into his life, I said this has to be something that we look at, especially because Jeffrey's photos also look in detail, passionately capturing these little things that he was seeing through his lens. He remembers word for word his diary entries that went along with the photographs. So there is detail there, So there is something to be said for this kind of slow capture, and it's missing from our education system today. It's missing from our lives today. And so we said that we must bring this back, show you all what this is all about. And hopefully so now that this is in the archive, it can be revisited by students across the globe whenever they feel like, and check in on what can inspire them to sketch and draw more. This is a small token of our appreciation. Thank you so much. Yes. And so tune in to the next Janal Talks, which is coming in 2 weeks from now. And